Did you know that 14 out of 14 studies below 3.5 billion platelets showed no significant results? When it comes to PRP, dose matters. But how much is enough?
I don't think we're fine-tuned and sophisticated enough to say 9 billion is not going to get the same result as 10 billion. I think there's a margin of error there.
Stick around to learn from expert Dr. Don Buford and explore key insights on PRP dosing.
There was a question, with all the recent flurry of papers, do you have a minimal total platelet amount per joint? And then what happens if you don't reach that threshold? What do you do?
So that's a great question. And the short answer is yes, I have an idea in mind. What I'd like to do for soft tissue applications is get above 3.5 billion platelets. And remember that the dose is volume times concentration. So you could do that with 3 cc's at 11 or 1200 platelet count, or you could do that with 1 cc and a platelet count of 3500. But that's based on some work that was spearheaded by Dr. Peter Everts and others in a collaborative kind of multi-center trial where the soft tissue papers, looking at PRP outcomes, the soft tissue papers that had doses under 3.5 billion, 14 out of 14 had outcomes that were not statistically significant.
Don't forget, if you want more about the business of orthobiologics, I have a podcast, or you can go on my website, The Business of Orthobiologics, and tune in.
And if you go above 3.5 billion in a single injection for soft tissue applications, and this was a summary of all the different ones that are out there, from tennis elbow to Achilles to rotator cuff. If you were above 3.5 billion, 9 out of 11 papers showed statistically significant outcomes. The disparity between that number, obviously 3.5 billion is arbitrary, but using that as a cutoff, the disparity between papers below that dose and papers above that dose was unexpected and striking. It wasn't just a gentle curve. It was like horrible, horrible, good, good. Okay. And so for soft tissue, I want to get above 3.5 billion. For joints, it's a little bit different. And let me back up and say one more thing. There's some independent research just for rotator cuff that suggests you want to get to 5 billion or even higher. Okay. And back to that initial conversation, if you have somebody with the lowest normal platelet count of 150 and you draw 60 cc's of blood with a reasonable machine, you ought to be able to get to 5 billion platelets for most soft tissue applications. Inside the joint, a lot of people talk about Bansal's paper out of India that has a dose of 10 billion platelets for a knee. Fewer people are familiar with Chu's study, which is a 3-injection protocol, 1 injection a week, and weekly the dose was 4.2 or 4.3 billion, don't quote me, but the total dose after 3 weeks was 12 billion, pretty close to Dr. Bansal's 10 billion. So question is, what do you do if you make a PRP injection, it comes in at 7 billion and you're planning on doing a single injection? I've found that they do okay. If I'm close, I would hesitate. And again, that's partly because we're drawing so much blood. Now, remember what I said also, because I don't want to be in that situation as much as I can avoid it, I often will draw 100, often, if not always, will draw 120 cc's, because then even if they're at 150 platelet count, if you do that math, we are starting at such a high initial platelet volume, 18 to 20 billion platelets, that even with a mid-level PRP making protocol, we're still going to end up at 10 billion. Even if we lose 50% of the platelets in the process of making PRP, we're still going to end up around 10 billion, if that's your target. If I really thought 10 billion was my target and I only ended up at 5 or 6, I would probably go back and draw more blood, to be honest. But that hasn't been a concern. I don't think we're fine-tuned and sophisticated enough to say 9 billion is not going to get the same result as 10 billion. I think there's a margin of error there.
Don't miss out. Please subscribe to our newsletter now to stay ahead of the world of orthobiologics. You can find the link below.